Hey guys, this is Chubs back again with another ACS scripting tutorial, and today I'm going to be showing you all how to create a basic RPG experience system similar to the one shown in my ZDoom RPG videos that I uploaded several years ago. So before we get started, I just want to say if you have not watched any of my previous ACS tutorials, I highly recommend going back and checking those out, because in this video we're going to be making use of variables and conditional statements and loops, and if you aren't familiar with any of those things, then you're probably going to be confused and you may fall behind. So I just want to point that out. It's important to watch those first and become familiar with those concepts before you move on to things like this. So before we get into the scripting, let's go ahead and go into visual mode and look at the map that I've set up. So it's just a basic square room, a player start, and a switch. And right now this switch has no actions attached to it, but we will be coming back to this switch later, and we're going to be using it to test our XP system when we've got it all set up. So let's go ahead and let's pop open the script editor. And of course, anytime you have a fresh project and you don't have anything at all in the editor, you always want to start with the line up top, which is the # or the number sign include space zcommon.acs. Just make sure you include that line at the top. That'll give you access to the different ACS functions, and without that line you're not going to be able to make use of all those functions, and you're going to be extremely limited, so just make sure you have that. So first let's just sort of talk about what an experience system is. So at the end of the day, whenever you're dealing with experience and levels and things like that, you're really just talking about numbers. So of course, in order to store that information, what we're going to be using is we're going to be using integers. So let's go ahead and let's just create some integer variables to store the player's experience and also the player's level. So we'll begin with an integer variable. You can start with that. You can start that by doing int or int space, and then the name of the variable. We'll call this one current XP. And we want to initialize this one to 0, because when a player starts an RPG, they always start with 0 experience. So let's do space equals and then space 0, and make sure you put a semicolon at the end. And then let's do another integer, and let's call this current level. And we're going to initialize this to 1, because when you start an RPG, of course, you always start at level 1. So we have created two integer variables. One of the variables will be for the current experience, and then the next variable will be for the player's current level. So pretty simple. Next, we're going to be creating an array, and this is where it gets a little complex, maybe a little confusing. But what this array will consist of is basically a list of the amounts of experience that you need to reach each consecutive level. And when we type this out, hopefully it'll make more sense to you guys. So let's go ahead and type it out, and then I'll go back and I'll cover it when we've got most of it finished. So it'll be an integer array. Naming this array is pretty difficult, but I think for the name what I'll type is XP to level. This is going to be, let's make it hold 5 integers. Equals, and then I'm just going to type some values in here. We're going to give it 5 different values, and we'll come back to this. Like I said, it's I understand that right now you're probably confused, but I'll come back and explain it. There we go. So that is 5 different values, and then I'll put a semicolon at the end. Let me just compile it to make sure I did that correct. There we go. So what we have here is an array of integers, and the array's name is XP to level, and as you can see, the size of the array is 5, and we do indeed have 5 different numbers inside it. So like I just explained a minute ago or so, these numbers that you see are levels of experience that are required to get to each level. Now this first number here, which is 0, is not going to be used, and that's probably obvious. You know, you're probably thinking, well, 0 experience is what you're starting with, so of course you're always going to have that. So I'm going to put a comment here that says unused, and we're just going to basically pretend that this is not even there. And this is important here. You're probably wondering why I'm even doing that. We're going to get to that here in just a second. Until we get to that though, let's go ahead and let's look at these others. So starting with this one, which is 100, that is going to be how much experience the player needs to get to level 2. 200 is going to be how much XP he needs to reach level 3. 400 is the requirement for 4, and then 800 is going to be our requirement for level 5. And level 5 is going to be basically the level cap. It's going to be the max level you can reach, and of course you can customize it for your own project, and you can customize your own amounts of experience, but for now that's how we're going to do it. So just to go back and cover this part a little bit more, the reason that we're skipping the first index, or why we're basically leaving it as unused, is because I want this array to be set up so that when we type it out at any time in our program, when we go to type the index, what I want us to be able to do is to just put the player level right in there. I just want us to be able to plug the player level in and then get the correct experience requirement back, because remember that array indexing begins as 0. So just to go through these indexes with you guys, this is index 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. So this array has indexes 0 through 4. Well, if we didn't do this, and if we started with 100, which is the check for level 2, if we plugged in current level, which would be 1, then what it would end up doing is it would end up checking the level requirement for level 3 instead of level 2. See, the way we have this right here, which is the correct way, this is the way I want to do it. If we type this and the player's at level 1, what's going to happen, let me go ahead and let's make it more clear here. Right now the player's at level 1, so this is basically going to be the same as typing this. And what this results in is it checks index 1, and this is a check for level 2, and that's what it should be. We want to check if the player has enough experience to go from 1 to 2. And let's say the player gains a few levels. Let's say he reaches level 3. Well, if we do, let's go through the indexes again. 0, 1, 2, 3. Sure enough, this is the check for level 4. That's what it should be. So if we have this, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at 400. We're going to be asking, does the player have 400 XP? And if so, he reaches level 4. So that's why I'm skipping it, so that we can just plug in the level. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you could always, if you wanted to omit this and just start with 100, you could always do current level -1 to negate the fact that the indexing starts at 0. But I think that's kind of sloppy, and I don't know, I just don't like having to remember to do that all the time. So that's why we're handling it this way. So now that we've got all that stuff out of the way, let's start with our first script. And this is a script that I'm going to speed through, because all this is going to be doing is printing the player's level and experience on the screen. And this is going to be using HUD message, and HUD message is a pretty complicated beast in its own right, and I really don't want to get bogged down in explaining the details of it. I want this tutorial to focus on the logic behind the experience. So let's type script 1, enter, because we want this to run when the player enters the map or when the map starts. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to type these out. And if you ever have any questions about HUD message, there's an excellent page on the ZDoom Wiki that talks about all the different parameters and that gives some great examples at the bottom. There's a chance that I'll do a HUD message video in the future, but it really is its own beast. It's a complicated function. It requires a lot of different arguments. You can do a lot with it, and I just don't want to get bogged down in that, because the focus of this video should be on the logic for the experience, and I really don't want to be focusing too much on the stuff that's displayed on the screen or on the messaging itself. So I'm going to speed through this. This is going to be showing the level, and you guys can copy this code and experiment with it yourself, but I'm not going to go into great detail as far as what it's doing. Something else that's bad about HUD message is it does include a semicolon right in the middle of the arguments, and this confuses the compiler and it makes it think you're finished, so it stops showing the suggestions for the stuff that follows. So that can make it pretty difficult to go through. You kind of have to go back here in order to have these suggestions show up again. But this is going to be just a regular old HUD message here, and you're going to see me going back here to look at these suggestions. This is a long function, and I'm just going back here to make sure I'm still on the right track. So I'm going to explain as I go along here, just in vague detail, what I'm doing. So this is going to be the X position. This is going to be the Y position. What it's going to do is it's going to print it in the upper right hand corner of the screen, and then I want the hold time to be 0. What that does is that makes it stay on the screen indefinitely. You might think 0 would just make it disappear instantly, but it makes it show up indefinitely. But what it doesn't do is, if you have a variable like we do here, it doesn't refresh its value. What you have to do to refresh it is you have to call the script again to actually refresh it. So even though it's staying on the screen, the value of the variable is not being refreshed. So that's important to understand. Let me make sure I got all of those arguments in there. There we go. I always like to compile after I type out a HUD message because it's such a long function. You can see how many arguments it has, and it's easy to mess up a function, or to miss an argument and to mess up the function. Next, I'm going to type the XP, and I think I'm going to come back and change the XP here at a later time in this tutorial, but I am going to speed through it because, again, this is a complicated function that requires a lot of arguments, and it could take up a whole lot of time with me explaining the intricacies of it, and I don't want to do that and get too bogged down. I do want to just vaguely explain what this is doing, and I want to demonstrate it for you guys though. So what we've done here is we have created two messages on the screen. They are both being shown in the upper right hand corner. The first one is going to be the player's level, and the second one is going to be his current amount of XP, and that way the player will see those at all times and can sort of track those. But again, going back to the hold message, those are not being updated even though they're being shown on the screen at all times. In order to update them, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to call this script again. We're going to do that down in script 2 when we type it out, but for now let's just compile this. There we go. Make sure it doesn't have any errors. Let's test it, and if you look in the upper right hand corner of the screen, you should see the level and the XP shown. And there we go. That was exactly what we wanted. So you could see the level and the current experience, which of course is 0 at the beginning. And once again, if you guys want to learn more about HUD message, go and check the wiki out. You can also copy the code that you see here and just experiment with it yourself. And I may very well be doing a video on it that's dedicated to it in the future, because there's so much you can do with it, and there's a lot to talk about when it comes to HUD message. But moving on, we're going to do script 2, and I'm going to type this out, and then we're going to go back and I'm going to explain what this is doing. So first thing that we're going to do with this script is we're going to increase the player's experience, because that's going to be the main role of this script. So let me type this, and then I'm going to come back and I'll explain what exactly is going on here. So we're going to take the player's current experience and we're going to increase it by amount. Now we could do this, or we could also type it this way. I guess we'll do it the long way since it's a little easier to read. So to explain this script takes in an integer, which is amount. So when you call this script, you can send it a custom amount, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the player's current XP and we're going to add amount to it, and that's what the final result will be. So if we call script 2 and we pass it 75, for example, then we're going to take whatever the player's current XP is and we're going to add 75 to it. And then that'll be stored, and that's what the player's final XP will be. So what we also want to do here, or at least what I want to do for the player's sake, is I want to let the player know that he gained XP, and I want him to know how much he gained. So we'll use a basic print statement. I'm not going to spend too much time on this either, because this is just printing stuff on the screen. So I'm going to say gained. I guess I'll do it in all caps just to be consistent, because up here they're in all caps. So I'll say gained however much it is XP. I think I did that correctly. Let's compile it. Uh-oh, we messed up. Let's see, what did I do here? Oh, okay, I didn't type S colon like I should have. There we go. So script 2 in its current form is a script that is all about increasing the player's XP. So again, you can pass in a custom amount and it adds that to the player's XP. And then what this print statement does is it pops up on the screen and it says gained the amount that you passed in XP. So let's say you call this script and you pass in 75. I think I gave 75 as an example a second ago. This print statement would do this. It would say gained 75 XP. Just a nice simple way to tell the player not only that they gained experience, but how much experience they gained. So now that we've got that out of the way, next comes the biggest, baddest, and most important part of this. So when we call this script, we're increasing the player's experience, but what we want to do next is we want to check and see, does he qualify for a level up? And it makes sense to do that after he gains experience. That way we can be sure that we're checking for the level up versus his most up-to-date experience. So that might have been a little bit confusing, but I just want to make sure that it's important to do it in this order, because by putting the check below this, we're making sure that we're checking against his latest XP. So we're going to use a for loop for this, and I'm going to explain to you guys the concept of what we're about to do here. So what we're going to do with this for loop is we're going to start at the very bottom of this array, in which case this will be checking for the highest possible level, and then we're going to work our way up. So what we're going to do, for example, is we're first going to check and say, does the player qualify for level 5? Does he have at least 800 XP? If that is true, then we're going to make him level 5. If that's not true, we're going to bounce up to the next level. We're going to say, does he have 400 XP? If he does, well, he qualifies for level 4. If that's not true, then we go up here, we check 200. If he does have at least 200, he's level 3, and so on and so forth. So I hope that's clear to you guys. That's the logic that we're going to be following right here in this for loop that we're about to create. So let's do for, create a temporary integer variable. And a lot of people with for loops, what you'll see is they'll start with 0 and they will count up. What we're going to do is we're going to count down. To put it another way, instead of starting at 0, we're going to start at the highest value, because like I said, we're going to start at the top of this array or at the end of the array, and then we're going to work our way backwards. So the size of the array is 5, but remember that since the array indexing starts at 0, 4 is the last index. So let's say 4. This is where we're starting at. And the condition here, this is where I sort of get confused sometimes. I think the condition, what we're going to say, is greater than or equal to the player's current level. And I'll go back and I'll explain what that's doing here in just a second. And after each iteration, we want to subtract, because we're not starting at 0 and counting up. We're starting at the highest possible index, and we're subtracting. We're going down, just like I showed you guys. So before we design the for loop itself, let's talk about these conditions here a little bit more. So we're starting at 4, and the reason we're doing this condition is because what we want to do is we want to check it against the player's current level. So if you are level 2 and this script runs, then what we're going to do is we're going to start at 4, and then we're going to subtract after each iteration, and we're going to check whether or not I is greater than or equal to 2. And that way we make sure that we only check the levels that we need. So if you're level 2, then what we're going to be checking is whether you qualify for level 5, level 4, or level 3. See, you would already be level 2, so it wouldn't make any sense to check for level 2. So I hope I made that clear. That can also be a little bit confusing, but that's why we have current level. This ensures that the loop only runs as many times as it needs to check against the player's level. So now let's design the actual guts of the loop. And this is where it can be a little confusing also to sort of keep up with it. So after each loop pass, we want to ask a question, or during each loop pass we want to ask a question. So we want to ask if the player's current experience is greater than or equal to the let me type this out here and then I'll explain. I think it'd be easier for me to do it that way. There we go. So what we're going to ask each time this loop runs is if the player's current experience is greater than or equal to the XP that's required at this particular pass of the loop. And if that's so, then what we want to do is we want to say the player has leveled up. So we'll print it on the screen first of all. We'll say leveled up. We'll take the player's level and we'll increase it by whatever I is plus 1. Let's see, plus 1. Yes, that makes sense, because the reason we're adding 1, remember, array indexing starts at 0, and if we were to just leave it at I, what it would do is it would tell the player that he leveled up, but the level would be set to 1 lower than what he actually wanted. So we want to add 1 to this in order to make sure that the level is correct. So if we didn't have plus 1 and the player, let's say the player went from level 2 to 3, then what would happen is it would tell him that he leveled up, but his level would just stay at 2. It wouldn't stay at 3 because the indexing, like I said, it starts at 0, and that can mess things up. So we'll make him level up, and then we'll put a break in here, and what this basically says is to break out of this entire loop. And we're going to go back and we're going to cover this more because this is a little confusing. For now though, let's go down. So this takes care of the level up, and what we want to do here at the very end is we want to refresh this stuff, because I think I said earlier that even though we have a hold time that the values of these variables is not updated, so we're going to need to manually do that, and that's really easy. All we have to do is just execute the script and that refreshes it. So let's go ahead and type that in, and I'll cover this also, but let's go back up to this script because this is the most confusing and complicated part, and it's even difficult for me to break it down for you guys, but I'm going to do my best here. So when this script runs, the player's XP is increased. Now when this loop runs, what it does is it starts at the highest possible level, and it asks whether or not the player's XP meets that requirement. And that requirement check is performed right here. So let's act like we're the computer and let's run through this. So when the loop starts, I is 4. So let's look at this statement here. So we're asking, is the player's XP, the player's current XP, greater than or equal to XP to level 4? Now if we go up here, let's count the indexing, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see that it would be comparing the player's current XP to 800. If it passes that check, then what we would say then is you leveled up. We take the player's level and we make it equal to I, which is 4, plus 1. Now remember what I was talking to you about just then, going through the indexing. We start with 4, and the check there for 800, that's checking for level 5 if the player can level up to 5. So we need to say I plus 1 in order to make him level 5. If we didn't have the plus 1, then we would tell him that he leveled up, but it would only set him to 4 instead of 5. So I hope that's clear to you guys. It helps to kind of go line by line and to read it like you're a computer and just study what each line is doing. Now the break that we entered in is also important. See, what we're doing here is we're saying set him to this level. This is like if this condition is met, then level him up, set his level to what it should be, and then break out of the loop. And this ensures that it doesn't have a cascading effect. So to explain that to you guys, if we omitted this break, let me comment it out here. If we did that, what would happen is it would go down, it would sort of have a cascading effect, and he would just always be reverted to the level he's at. So it would say he passes the check for level 5, he passes the check for level 4, he passes the check for 3, he passes the check for 2. It would always do that cascading effect because it would never break out of the loop. If we have the break there, then it ensures that when it finds the highest possible qualified level for the player, then after the level up is performed, then it breaks and it doesn't do the cascading thing. So I hope that's clear to you guys also. It is a little confusing, but what I recommend you guys do if you're still confused is read it line by line and follow it. Act like you're a computer. Start with I being 4 and then substitute 4 for I, and just read it to yourself and go through the different circumstances and do it that way. Now going back to the line that we added, all that we're saying is after we've updated the player's experience and after we have checked whether or not he can level up and everything, at the very end, after all of that is done, execute this script again. And all that's for is to refresh it so that we know that we're showing the player's latest experience and his latest level. Now I don't like the experience the way we have it here. I'm going to do this a little differently. Let's see. I think the way I had it was I showed the player's current experience. I'm trying to think how I had it in the old video. What I'm going to do, I'll type it out for you guys. What I want to do is I want to have something like this. I want to have XP and then the player's current experience and then a slash and then however much experience is required. So if you're first starting, it would be like this, 0 out of 100, because 100 is the requirement for level 2. So I'm going to say his current XP, that's right, comma, I'm going to do the slash there, comma, and then we want, let's see, what do we want this to be? XP to, I hope this is correct here, XP to level. We may have to go back and tweak this because I think I'm sort of confusing myself. I think that will, XP to level, current level, I think that may be correct. We'll check it out, but that should do what I wanted. So I think we have just about completed everything. There may still be some bugs, like I said, this or some logic errors. This part here may be incorrect. We may have to check the part that comes after the slash. But for now, let's compile it. You can see we're not having any errors. And let's go here to our switch. And this is where we're going to use this to test our script. So let's give it a script execute function. I think it's, is it 86? No, that's incorrect. Is it 80? Yes, that's it. So it's given an action of 80, which is script execute. Let's make it execute script 2 because this is our level up script. And then you can see it says amount. This is how much XP we want to give the player. Let's say that he gets 50 XP every time he flips the switch. I'm going to make it repeatable, and I'm going to make it when the player presses use. And that should all be set up. So let's test it. Let's study how the logic works, and let's also make sure that I didn't screw up on the HUD message stuff, because it is possible that the part that comes after the slash will not be correct. So let's test that, see if it's correct, and see if it works. Alright, so it appears I actually did type that correctly. So I was afraid I might have butchered the part after the backslash. It did work correctly. You could see that flipping the switch gave us experience, and it updated the HUD message info so that we could see what our experience was and what our level was. Now, if you notice there at the end, it did sort of glitch out where whenever we hit the max level, which was level 5, it sort of showed us this. It said, let's see, what was it again? I think it said XP, whatever our XP was, like let's say 800, and then it said out of 0 instead of how much we needed to get to the next level, because there is no next level in this project. I think what we could do is we could put in a conditional statement. I'm going to do this. This will just sort of be like a bonus because we've really completed everything, but this will polish it up a little bit more. Let's put in a basic conditional statement to say if current level is, let's just say if your current level is less than 5, then do the backslash thing. Otherwise, if it's not, then all we're going to do is we're just going to show the XP. We're not going to show the backslash and how much you have left, because there is nothing more to shoot for. There's really no need to have that. So I'm going to type this real quick, and we're going to do another test just to make sure it works, and that'll just about conclude this video. So I have a feeling I missed something here. Well, it compiled without errors. So this basic conditional statement should solve that. Let's go back and let's test it one more time. And when we hit level 5, the backslash part should be chopped off, and it should just show us our just total experience. So let's test it, and hopefully it'll work. Alright, and that took care of the problem. So you can see when we hit level 5, the backslash part, we just got rid of it, and we just started to show the player's experience, and that was all taken care of by this extremely simple conditional statement. We just ask, if the player's level is less than 5, then show the backslash, otherwise don't. So that really covers it. Hope this tutorial helped you guys out. I know it's really long-winded. This was a hard tutorial for me to do. I got to be honest with you guys. This is probably like the 10th take, because I had trouble explaining myself in my other takes, and I really hope I didn't do a bad job in this one. But if you guys have any questions, or if you're still confused about anything, just feel free and let me know. And what I'm also going to be doing for you guys is I'm going to be uploading this WAD so that you can just download it yourself, because I know this is a lot of stuff to type out, and hopefully this will help you all out with starting your own RPG projects. And of course, during your scripting, if there's a point in your WAD that you want to check the player's level, well, I already did it up here, but let's say like you have a door you want to open and you want to check if the player's a certain level to be able to open it. You could do, script 3, let's just do a void script. You could just check, if current level is, let's say the player has to be level 3 to open a door. If it's greater than or equal to 3, then door open, blah, 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 fill it out. And you don't even need an else statement because, anything that follows, there really is nothing that follows. So you could do this, if the player's at least level 3, then open the door. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen because there's nothing that follows. Now, of course, you could do else, and you could tell the player, you could say, need to be at least level 3. You could do something like that with a print message so that they understand, hey, I need to be level 3 to open this. But that's just one example of how you could take this experience system and this leveling system and integrate it into your maps. You could have doors that require levels to open. You could have switches that require certain levels to flip. I think you can go in and you could maybe modify the player's movement speed depending on what level he is. So as he gains levels, you can make him faster and faster. There's all kinds of different things you can do. But again, I hope this helped you guys out. I apologize that it's so long-winded, and if I confused you guys, I apologize. And this was a really hard tutorial for me to do because there's so much to explain, and it was kind of a complicated setup, but I think it is a pretty sophisticated and a pretty efficient setup. I think it's pretty easy to modify and to put into your own projects and to expand. But yet again, if you have any questions, feel free and leave a comment below. I really appreciate you guys watching as usual, and this is Chubb signing out.